in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our second webinar, and it's the second webinar in our Be Your Best You series. So if you joined us last week, it's great to have you with us again, and if you're new to our webinars, well, it's wonderful to have you on board. So first of all, can we make sure that everyone can hear us and see our slides? And if you can, just please type yes in the chat box, and that should be on your top right-hand corner of the screen. That's great. Brilliant, many thanks. Well, my name is Sue Quigley.
My name is Debbie Walmsley. Sue and I are both personal coaches for professional women, and we provide VIP coaching days, training and public speaking. We've developed this series of webinars called Be Your Best You, which are all about you discovering how wonderful you really are and how to let all that wonderfulness shine through so that you can turn up as the very best version of yourself.
Now, our webinars are designed specifically for professional women, and over the next few weeks, we're going to be covering some key topics that we think you're going to find really useful. So you can see a list of the up and coming ones there on the screen, and we'll update you about the next one and also our upcoming workshops at the end of this session. So what are we going to be doing? Well, over the next few weeks, Debbie and I will be drawing on our own experiences and expertise to address just some of the situations and issues that we can all come up against. You know, those events can end up making us feel less than, make us feel worthless, undervalued, and lacking in self-esteem and confidence. And we're going to share with you some examples and exercises to try out so that you can change your experience of these events and in turn get a better outcome. And when followed correctly and with intention, then these skills will improve your experiences and in turn change your outcome.
Now, we talked about intention last week, and Sue and I make no apologies for covering it again because we think this is really, really key. You know, everything we do starts with an intention, and we'd like to invite you right now to set the intention of just throwing caution to the wind and trying something new. You know, even if we suggest something that you may not wholly believe in will make a difference, have a go, decide that you will do it, and apply the techniques suggested. It doesn't matter whether you've joined this webinar tonight out of curiosity or maybe something in your life is not going quite right for you. In order for that something to change, you have to decide to do something different now.
So tonight's webinar is called Rapport, Charisma and Questions. And in this episode, we'll learn how to relate better to people and create faster and stronger relationships. So rapport is all about building trust and better connections with people. And charisma is that special quality that some people have. And we think you can have it too. So we're going to share the ingredients of a charismatic person. And you know, it's perfectly realistic for you to acquire these too. So if you listen now, by the end of this webinar, you will find out how easy it is to create instant rapport, trust and confidence. You'll get to find out the voice patterns of influence and discover the kind of words to avoid. And we'll also have a list of powerful questions that are designed to get you the right results every time.
Okay, so let's start off by looking at the key principles of rapport and body language. Now, we've really looked at this in a working perspective. So much of the context that we give this has work in mind, but have no doubt you'll find these tips just as useful in your personal life too. Now, did you know that when we're forming an opinion of someone, we don't just take notice of what they're saying? In fact, that's the least thing that we pay attention to. It's body language and tone of voice that we use mainly to assess whether we like that person, whether we like what they're saying to us. And there's been some research done back in the 70s which reveals that, incredibly, body language and voice tonality amount to about 93% of our communication. just 7% relates to the importance of the words that we use. Now, I find that incredible.
That really puts things into perspective for me. When I think back to the times that I absolutely agonised over what to say when I was doing presentations and things like that, and I paid little attention to how I was saying it. I was always far more bothered about what I was going to say and having to know everything in great detail about what I was going to be talking about. It's little wonder I often didn't get the response I was hoping for. But Debbie, talking of research, I came across some fascinating stuff recently, which identified a link between how we stand and how we feel. So just to take a step back on that, we know that our thoughts are responsible for how we feel. That's our emotions and our state. And in turn, our emotions affect our physiology. That's how we stand or sit, our posture and our expressions. So emotions, physiology, and thoughts. All three of these are linked, and a change in one area affects the other two. So in other words, changing your thoughts will change your emotions and your physiology. And in reverse, changing your physiology and your thoughts and your emotions change too. So just imagine if you're about to present to an audience and you need to exude confidence, but you're actually feeling insecure. Well, changing your physiology, changing your posture to be that of a confident person will have a direct impact on your thoughts and how you feel. So confident posture equals a confident feeling.
But so that just sounds a bit too simple.
Okay, well, let's have a go. So think about a really happy event in your life and remember the detail of that event. So remembering the detail, what do you see? And what were the sounds around you at the time? Imagine how you felt. And how are you feeling now? And as you think of that event, do you notice that you're smiling? Okay, well, shake that off a moment now. Get rid of that thought. Think of a blue tree. And now think about something really sad. Maybe it's a memory that you've had of something that's happened in your life, or just imagine a particularly sad scenario. And imagine that feeling, imagine that the detail of that event. And as you do that, do you feel your posture slouching? So now, did you notice your physiology change in some way as you experience the different emotions? See, as your thoughts change, your posture changes too. What you're thinking actually shows in your physiology. Now, here's the exciting research bit. When we stand confidently, not only does that give an impression to other people about how we might be, it actually also changes our body chemistry, and I mean quite literally. So as you now know, our posture can really affect how we think and feel about ourselves. So think of your favourite superhero and go on, strike a pose.
Yeah, Wonder Woman. Yes,
You're thinking of Wonder
I
Woman.
would do. I remember Wonder Woman.
And as you're thinking about Wonder Woman, or whichever superhero you're thinking of, how might they stand? You see, it's most probable that what you have in your mind now is known as a high power pose. Now, a high power pose is an open pose. It's a pose that's either standing or sitting, but it's in an open position with chest and limbs extended. And research shows that when we adopt a high power pose for just 2 minutes, our testosterone, which is a dominance hormone in the brain, actually rises and makes us feel more confident. So simply changing how we sit or stand, making our body more open and more upwards, actually spikes our testosterone, and that positively affects how we think and feel about ourselves. So our body positioning can really change our minds.
Do you know, I'm just sitting here thinking about that, and it's quite amazing because I'm actually thinking now about how I might stand or sit before an important meeting. Because normally just before a meeting or a presentation, I'm sitting there and I'm hunched up over my notes or my laptop, or over my iPhone maybe. I'm just
Yeah.
sitting, yeah.
And that would actually be a low power pose.
So if I'm doing that, well, one, that's not going to give a good impression to others, but I suppose that's not going to enable me to feel very confident either.
Yeah. So what if instead you choose in that instance to strike a high power pose?
To be honest, I think I might feel a bit daft.
Or doing that in the middle of the office,
Yeah.
yeah. Or in reception if you're going for an interview. Well, you only need to hold the pose for 2 minutes to get that spike in your testosterone. So you could actually go and find somewhere discreet, maybe go to the ladies' loo, strike up your pose and feel your confidence rise. Now, as I mentioned, there is scientific research behind this. And it's a lady called Professor Amy Cuddy. And she's done a TED talk called Your Body Language Shapes Who You Are. And I would say go on to Google and find this TED talk. It's absolutely fantastic. And it really puts the perspective on and all the scientific bits into the research into how it's possible and the tests and experiments they actually carried out.
As well as our body language changing our minds, our body language actually speaks volumes. And when we want to create the right impression with people, it's our body language that's more important than the words we speak. Just imagine now how good it would be if each and every one of you could create instant rapport, you could create trust and confidence with others. Well, here's good news. You can. Now, earlier we mentioned some percentages around communication. You see, when we look at communication, we're taught to think that the most important things that we say are the words that we say. Yet the words, all in all, only form 7% of the total communication between two people. That's not really that much, is it? Roughly 38% is determined by how we say the words, the tone we use, and astonishingly, 55% is our non-verbal communication or body language. That means it's not only important what we say, but how we say it and with what gestures. But let's think about this. What exactly is rapport? Well, it's about being on the same wavelength. It's feeling really comfortable with somebody. It's trusting them. It's having that engagement with someone where the conversation is just so easy and it flows. It's just when you know where that other person's coming from. Now, can you remember a time when you've met somebody for the first time and yet you felt as if you've known them all your life? You can't quite put your finger on it, but there is something, you've got no idea what it is, but you feel so at home with this person. Well, that's rapport. And rapport creates trust.
So I'm sure you've all had this situation when you've met someone or even just seen someone across the room and all the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. That person hasn't even spoken to you, and yet for some inexplicable reason you instantly don't like or trust them. On the other hand, have you ever walked into a room and you're instantly drawn to one group of people rather than another? We might even go over to someone wearing something we like, or they're carrying a book that maybe we've already read. See, it's easy to strike up a conversation because similarity helps us break the ice. And we build rapport. And we like people who are similar to us.
We're also unconsciously drawn to someone or even a group of people without knowing why. And it's simply due to that person's posture, their body language, or it could even be the way they speak or how they dress. When we're in rapport with somebody, as we've said, the conversation flows easily. You'll catch yourself saying things like, "Oh God, yeah, that's just like me." So, can we make rapport happen then? Well, yes, of course we can. Rapport is a skill. It's a skill that can be developed. We can all learn about it and how it works, and we can all improve our ability. And it's easy. It's a great skill to have, to be able to feel relaxed quickly and easily in someone's company.
So, one of the best ways is to look for or create similarities with other people. To create rapport, first of all, we need to watch the other person, and then we need to listen to them. And then you can start to match their gestures. So it can be as if you were a mirror. So if they raise their left hand, you raise your right hand. And if they lean forward whilst they're talking, then when you're talking, you lean forward. And we can subtly match or mirror the body language that the other person uses.
Oh, hang on a minute. Won't that seem a bit odd? Excuse me. If someone did everything that I did, I think I might want to clobber them.
Yeah, well, I did say you need to be subtle. So you're not so much mimicking them, and your movements do have to look natural. So you don't need to mirror or match everything that the person does.
So how would that work then?
So how would that work? Well, so when you're with someone you want to get in rapport with, then just subtly adjust your body posture or use a gesture that the other person's used. Now, you only need to do this a few times and over a short period of time. You know, if you mirror and match everything, you will come across as a bit weird or irritating, and it's probably the fastest way to get in the black eye.
So it's just body movements. If they sit with their legs crossed, I can just do the same?
Yeah, that's right. And there is another way to increase rapport, and that's by matching voices. Now, this is a fantastic tool to use, particularly if you work in sales or you happen to use the telephone a lot and you can't just rely on body language to get you by. And all you do then is simply match your voice to be closer to theirs. Now, again, be subtle. Don't try and imitate their accent for a start. Just listen to the speed or the tone of their voice and adjust yours. Or listen to the words they use frequently and use the same words back to them.
Okay, just so that I'm sure, we're not talking about mimicking someone's voice or doing an impression of them, are we?
No, absolutely not. Not at all. The idea here is simply to match the tonality of the other person. So do they speak quickly, in an excited tone, a happy tone, or do they speak slowly or very dryly? If the other person speaks at a million miles an hour in a really excited voice, then you better keep up and sound animated too. But on the other hand, if they speak slowly and carefully, then you should do the same. And you can also match the words that they use.
Okay, well, actual words. Can you give me an example?
Yeah, sure. So if they say something like, oh, that's a great point, to see what you're trying to say, then you could respond back using the same words, as in, oh, I'm really pleased you see what I'm trying to say.
I can see how this could be really useful. Sometimes persuading a friend or a boss or somebody I work with about my particular point can be quite tough. It doesn't matter about how much evidence I've got to back up my point. So I guess instead of trying to get my point across in the usual way that I've done it in the past, I can just mirror the person that I'm talking to in body language, speed of voice, volume, and even in word choice.
That's right. And as I said, just take caution and be subtle. They're not supposed to know what you're doing.
But so what actually happens for that other person then?
Well, it's a subconscious way to make the person you're speaking with more comfortable. They start to feel that you're both on the same wavelength and have something in common. It's creating that similarity. But another useful tip, is to display a genuine interest in the other person and what they're saying.
Well, that's just common sense, isn't it?
Well, it sounds like it, doesn't it? But how often do we really listen to the other person? And I mean, listen to understand rather than listen to reply. In fact, just listen rather than think about what you're going to say next.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Sometimes we're formulating responses before that person's even finished speaking.
Yeah. So being good at rapport and really listening to people and being fully present, those are just a few qualities that make up charisma. Did you like that?
I love that. I love that segue, Sue. Thank you. Yes, charisma. Yep. Now, Now, what can we say about charisma? Well, it's a bit of an enigma, really. What exactly is it?
Well, that's just it. Sometimes you can't put your finger on it. It's that X factor quality that some people just seem born with. But charisma is an amazing trait to have. We're naturally drawn towards charismatic people. Imagine what having an abundance of charisma would do for you. You see, charisma is a characteristic that anyone can develop, and it can be learned because it has everything to do with personal mindset and all the non-verbal behaviours associated with it. Now, charisma may seem like a superficial quality at first glance, but if you look deeper, you'll see that there are more profound characteristics. And it's a combination of three things: presence, power, and warmth. And all of these combined come together to say that they enable us to deeply connect with the people around us.
So let's take a look at the first of those, presence. Being more present in the moment. A way to become more present is to make eye contact with those you talk to. Now, I'm talking about warm, friendly eye contact. Use really soft eyes because that lets your partner know that you're present and interested in what they have to say. And also, watch that body language. Make sure you square up to your body and your shoulders to those that you're talking to and look people directly in the eye. You don't have to be fully present in each and every moment. That's just not realistic or possible. But when you can, and when it's important, make the most of your time with others and let them know that you're present.
So I wonder if anyone cringed when we mentioned power as a quality for charisma. You see, power is defined in many ways, but when it actually comes to charisma, it refers to the perception of others that you have influence and actually that you can make things happen. Now, naturally, some people are assigned power automatically as a result of the job that they hold or the amount of money that they've got. But you don't have to possess any of these things for people to see you as powerful. Perception of personal power is pretty much determined by the body language and other non-verbal cues, and all those we've spoken about before, like posture, voice, and rapport.
And charisma is strongest when both presence and power are combined with genuine warmth. If power is a perception that you can make things happen, then warmth is a perception that you will use that power for the good of others. Warmth, like presence, is really hard to fake. We can appear to be polite with manners and a smile, but warmth comes from a deeper place than being pleasant. Most of us notice when we're in the presence of someone who has genuine affection for us. Since we can't really fake warmth, we must remove the barriers to feeling genuine warmth for others. And the biggest barrier may be a lack of warmth towards ourselves. And this is typically when we attach more credibility to all those negative thoughts that we have than the positive ones.
So having said all that, the real secret to becoming more charismatic is to embrace the things you already do well and then work to improve the areas that may be limiting you. So take a few minutes now to note the behaviours and attitudes that you're good at and those that you think you could work on. And to do this, consider the people that you believe are charismatic and note what it is about them that you find appealing. And then you can consciously spend time practicing these traits as you go through your workday and throughout the conversations that you're having in the day as well. And you'll find that over time, these habits are likely to manifest in a more charismatic you. Now we've been looking at how easy we can build rapport and increase our own charisma, I think you can see how it's going to enhance relationships. So it wouldn't be great now if all of that good work was undone by simply not paying attention to the words that we use and how we use them. Sometimes we say words without giving much attention to their impact, and that is the impact on ourselves as much as other people.
That's so true. Have you ever thought about the words that we use to describe ourselves and how we feel? Very specific words, the specific words that we select to describe a situation create exactly what that situation means to us and how we feel. Let me give you an example. Maybe a situation arises that you refer to as devastating. Imagine an event of that kind now. Would there be a different, perhaps a lesser emotional intensity if you could call it a bit disappointing? Granted, there are some things that really are devastating, but have a think. Have you used words like devastating or similar words for things that actually aren't? I would suggest that if we use words with less intensity when we can, we will evoke a less intense emotional response in ourselves and others.
So here's another example. When you're dealing with conflict, we might say we're furious, and we'll feel furious because of the power of that word. But what if during that moment we instead told ourselves that we're aggravated or just irritated? You see, those words promote less of an emotional and physiological reaction. And so in turn, we feel less emotional. We certainly feel less furious. So what if we simply control the meaning that we attach to situations through our words?
Again, there are things that may well justify furious, but why not save the word for those things? Everything isn't devastating or enraging in hindsight. Actually, very few things are. Many things are just a minor challenge and not a major problem. But if we use major problem words, we will get major problem physiological response, and that's stress. Think about how words are shared with you. Like if we take me and Sue, for instance, if we disagree, there's a big difference in my saying to Sue, I disagree with you, rather than saying you're wrong or you're lying. The latter would likely affect our business relationship and interaction in a really negative way.
So when we put labels on things, we tend to create corresponding emotions that go with them. So instead, what if we could expand our emotional vocabulary so that the words we choose produces the emotional states that we desire? Well, you know what, we can. And it's another example of the power we have over our own lives. So try playing with your word choices and see if you can manipulate your feelings by manipulating your words.
Imagine if you can, you're with a close friend and he or she says, I really appreciate you as a friend. I'm glad we get time to spend together, and I especially like your sense of humour. And then pauses and adds, but. Or someone says, that's a lovely jacket you're wearing, but. You did a wonderful job with this, but. I like your new hairstyle, but.
So what happens in your mind when the person says that little three-letter word, even before they say anything else? And generally there's a dual response, and we immediately decide that everything that went before the but is unimportant and merely a lead into the next piece, which will then announce what they really think, feel or intend. Now, I'll tell you who the master of this is. I don't know if you're watching it at the moment. Simon Cowell on The X Factor.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a bit of a Strictly fan, and I have to say all of the judges on Strictly are the same. It doesn't matter what they say, we're all waiting for the but. And it honestly makes no difference what they say before that. And that's because but negates or cancels everything that goes before it. And it's generally accepted as a signal that here comes the really important bit coming up.
So when you use it in your, what's going to happen is your listener will give more attention and more weight to what you said after the but. This tiny little word is widely misused. And, here's some more examples. Managers now, or your boss, they'll say it when giving feedback. They'll say something like, you handled that absolutely wonderfully, but, or they'll say something like, on the whole, your performance was good, but. Here's some more, spouses and partners. I've certainly been on the end of a few of these buts. I'd really love to have dinner with you tonight, but it's great being with you, but.
Yeah, although it was quite some time ago, I do remember being at school and some of my teachers saying, oh, well, that's an improvement, but, or your spelling's good, but.
In each case, it is likely that the person speaking fully intends to be helpful or complimentary, but they step on this verbal landmine and demolish the effect that they're attempting to create. But isn't the only but. Yet and however can be used with similar negative impact. For example, I really enjoyed that. However, or you know what, you made some really good points just now. And yet, so what should we do instead? It's really simple. Replace but with the word and. And I'm going to challenge you to do this and say just do it for 7 days. It's highly likely that you will use it a lot less in the future. So instead of saying something like, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I wonder if we could examine this particular point. You could use, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I wonder if we could examine this particular point.
Now, that may seem a bit of a stretch because but, that little word and the attitude that goes with it is quite deeply ingrained within our language. And here's another example. Now, I heard this on the radio the other day. I'll give you the sentence and then I'll say it again, just replacing but with and see if you get a different meaning from each. So, Brit sensation Ed Sheeran has been nominated for a Grammy, but he's up against Coldplay and Katy Perry. Brit sensation Ed Sheeran has been nominated for a Grammy and he's up against Coldplay and Katy Perry. Now, I've tried to keep the tonality neutral on that so it reads like a statement, but I didn't actually find that very easy to do because just changing the one word made it feel different to me, even as I was reading it out, and even though I actually knew what was coming up. And naturally, I felt the inference was different. So I actually struggled. I felt like I should read it that particular way. Now, I don't know if you could hear the difference, Debbie.
Yeah, no, definitely. There is a big difference. But there's nothing wrong with using the but, as long as you're aware how it's going to influence the other person's thinking. And here's a tip. Here's a really strong, powerful way to use a but. When you want to acknowledge something negative but emphasize the positive, especially if you're in a team environment, you've got a bit of bad news to deliver the team, but you don't want to lose the motivation or the spirit. So you could say something like, okay, we messed up there, but let's learn from our mistakes and move on. Or you may say something like, we're certainly facing some huge obstacles with this project, but I know we can succeed. Now you may ask, why make a fuss over one little word? It's because it has such a big impact. But once you become aware, you can start to use it to great effect.
In my work experience, I've seen some really, really good managers and they give great feedback comments, but then completely sabotage the whole effect by adding but. And similarly, I've heard people tell their girlfriends, boyfriends how much they love them and then completely spoiled that with a but afterwards as well.
Yeah, I think we've all sort of witnessed those conversations. Yeah. So I'd just like to very quickly give you some other substitute words too that would make a huge impact on your communication. Replace if with the word when. Just listen to these two sentences. If only I could get that job. That sounds a bit like wishful thinking, doesn't it? If you replace it with when I get that job, Sounds much more decisive and determined. And replace try with will. I'll try to do enough to get that job. When I hear that, try implies that you just won't succeed, even sort of that you don't expect to succeed, compared with I will do enough to get that job. Sounds much more committed and positive. It's really useful to know these small details and what a big impact that they can have on your communications. So, we now know about rapport, we know about increasing our personal presence, and the best words to use to get a better outcome. What we'd like to do now is take that one step further, because we've all had those times when we feel we need more information.
One of the emotions that certainly I do, and most people can have difficulty dealing with, is when we don't have clarity about a situation, when we feel really uncertain. So have you ever had a time when someone's made a comment, maybe on your performance at work, maybe it was a partner, and after they've made that comment, you just weren't sure what to say, let alone where you stood on matters? Sometimes that can even happen when someone gives you positive feedback. So in a situation like that, what can you do? Well, there are 3 questions that you can ask that will extract everything you need to know about what is unclear, whether that's with your partner or colleagues at work, and it will leave you in no doubt at all about what you need to do next. It gives you much more information on your current situation and sets you on the right track to knowing what to do next, the next step.
These are really powerful questions, because when we are asking very specific questions about our behaviours that the person talking to us understands to be either effective, ineffective, or non-existent. Now, these questions are really difficult for anyone to fudge the answers on. I always ask these questions at work, especially when I'm in my reviews, and I always get very clear advice. So what are these questions? What should I continue to do? What should I stop doing? What should I start to do?
So think about a situation now and ask yourself these questions. And what do they make you think? Now, these questions are very direct, and the depth and coverage that they give over when you're asking them ensures that you're going to receive a lot of valuable information with just these few questions alone. Now, whilst they may look very simple and corporate, you can, of course, soften them if you're talking to a partner, your boyfriend or your husband or any of your close family. But in essence, keep the questions as they are. Being able to ask effective questions is a skill that everyone can learn. Skillful questioning is just one of the key ingredients of any solid and successful relationship, whether that's at work or at home. See, when we ask questions that are poorly constructed, it nearly always leads to poor communication, and more often than not then just causes complete misunderstanding. With powerful questions like these that get to the point, we're able to dig deep into any confusing issue, find out more information, and gain clarity. Because these questions usually trigger curiosity in a listener and then encourage more reflective conversation. I will note, though, importantly, make it a point to ask rather than interrogate the person that you're in. And this involves all the essential elements that we've been discussing this evening, such as voice tone, body language, and word choice, and all of that in order to generate much more effective communication.
We've covered quite a bit this evening. We've talked about the key principles of rapport and body language, how to create trust, relate better to people, and in turn create faster and stronger relationships. We've explored charisma. It's not such a myth, is it? We can all naturally increase our charisma by utilising these 3 qualities. And
Sorry, I'm slow with my clicker.
That's all
My
right.
new clicker. I'm slow.
Utilising these three qualities of presence, power, and warmth. We've also looked at language, words we can avoid and substitute to gain more positive outcomes. And finally, we've given you some really powerful questions that you can ask, either at work or personally. Questions that will move you away from what do I do now?
And you know, to get really good at all of this, it does take practice. And you know, have fun while you're practicing, especially building rapport. Why don't you now just go and then in your casual conversations, just try and build rapport with people? I promise you can do it. And actually, you'll have great fun doing it as well. So that's it. That's concluded tonight's webinar. And many thanks to all of you for connecting with us and all the contributions that you've made and the comments that you've given us as well on air, which is really encouraging. You know, it's great to be sharing this space with so many of you. And we look forward to you joining us for our next webinar, which, as you can see, takes place on Monday, January the 12th at 7:30 p.m. And this time the topic is influence, impact, and personal power. And you know, also throughout March and April, we're going to be running some one-day workshops in and around London, and we're going to be bringing you much more information about that early in the new year. So make sure you tune into the next webinar to hear about that. Please keep in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. And the slide here shows how you can, and feel free to email or phone us. And indeed, if you want any further information about anything we've spoken to you about this evening, please do drop us a line.
Have a wonderful Christmas and a Happy New Year to everyone. What a great time to practice that rapport. Now, we really look forward to speaking to you again and seeing you in the 2015.